Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for a quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today in the Workplace Minute, we're digging into new data on student loan debt and why it's becoming one of the most important and overlooked drivers of employee stress, productivity, and retention. The numbers are eye-opening, and for HR and business leaders, this is quickly shifting from a personal finance issue to a real business challenge. Let's break it down. New research from tuition.io makes it very clear that student loan debt is shaping how people show up at work, how they think about their careers, and whether they can stay with their employers at all. Let's start with the current state. The scale of financial stress tied to student loans is significant, and it's showing up directly in the workplace. According to the data, nearly 3/4 of employees, 72%, say financial stress impacts their ability to focus at work. And that number jumps even higher for younger workers, with 84% of Gen Z employees and more than 3/4 of millennials reporting that financial stress is affecting their focus and engagement on the job. And this isn't just occasional stress. Nearly half of employees say they experience financial stress often or very often, and more than a quarter say they're thinking about it weekly or even daily. And when you layer in the actual debt burden, the picture becomes even clearer. A meaningful share of employees are carrying large student loan balances. About 30% of workers with master's degrees have more than $50,000 as student loan debt, and about 1/3 of PhD holders carry balances exceeding $100,000. This tells us that student loan debt is not just an entry-level issue. It's affecting highly skilled and highly educated talent, the very people organizations are competing the hardest to attract and retain. And the impact goes well beyond day-to-day stress and begins to reshape long-term financial security. Nearly 1 in 5 employees say they cannot afford to contribute to a retirement plan, and among workers with student debt, the vast majority, especially millennials and Gen Z, say that the debt is directly limiting their ability to save for their futures. What we are really seeing is multiple generations of workers delaying or even derailing key financial milestones like saving for retirement, buying homes, and building financial stability. And when that happens, that doesn't stay outside of work. It shows up in focus, engagement, attendance, and overall performance every single day. Looking ahead, the policy environment is about to add even more pressure. Beginning later in 2026, federal policy changes are expected to increase the financial strain on borrowers. Administrative wage garnishment is set to resume for defaulted loans, which means up to 15% of a worker's disposable income could be withheld without a court order. And at the same time, changes to repayment programs could reduce access to some of the more affordable income-driven plans, while new borrowing limits and the elimination of certain loan programs will make financing educations much more difficult going forward. So just as the cost of living in the U.S. remains elevated, many workers are about to feel even more pressure on their take-home pay. So this is where the conversation shifts from an individual burden to the organizational impact, because student loan debt is not just a personal finance issue, it's a talent issue. And the data is very clear here. Nearly 60% of employees say they would be more likely to stay with their employer if student loan repayment support were offered as a benefit. And among employees who actually carry the student loan debt, 80% of them say this kind of support would increase their motivation at work. And importantly, this holds true across income levels, even among higher earners making over $200,000 a year. So if you're an employer competing for talent, especially younger or highly educated workers, student loan assistance is no longer a nice-to-have benefit. It's becoming a strategic lever for retention, engagement, and overall workforce stability. And at the same time, more than half of employees say their employers either don't understand the pressure of student loan debts or have not taken any meaningful actions to address them. That gap represents both a risk and a significant opportunity for organizations. And at the structural level, there are broader conversations here that need to be had about the cost of education, access to affordable repayment programs, and how we might better align higher education with workforce outcomes. Those are the long-term challenges that policymakers and institutions must continue to address. But for today, at the employer level, there are some tangible steps organizations can take right now. First, direct student loan repayment assistance is one of the most impactful and tax-efficient benefits employers can offer today. Second, organizations should rethink how tuition assistance programs are designed. One of the biggest barriers employees face is the upfront costs, and the data shows that more than 3/4 of workers would be more likely to use these kinds of benefits if the costs were covered upfront instead of reimbursed later. And third, providing guidance and support is critical. Student loan policy is complex, constantly changing, and giving employees access to expert advice or financial coaching can make a real difference in helping them navigate repayment options and to reduce their overall financial stress. Ultimately, this is about more than an employee's debts. It is about focus at work, productivity, and whether employees can feel financially secure enough to bring their best selves to work. And if nearly 3/4 of the workforce is distracted by financial stress of any kind, that's not just an individual problem. That's a business and organizational problem. And increasingly, it's one that forward-thinking employers are starting to address in more meaningful ways. That's it for today's Workplace Minute. Thank you so much for listening, and a big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. If this episode made you think about how you can better support your employees with their financial well-being, please share it with a colleague. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.